Welcome everyone. Thank you very much for coming. I cannot even begin to describe the pleasure and honor it is for me to be here, and I think I am speaking for all the scholars as well. We are coming from England, but we are also coming from very different parts of the world, mostly Latin America, Africa, India, Jordan. So we're used to warmer weathers, so if our voice does quiver, please bear with us, although I think we're going to be fine with the heating. That said, let me talk to you a little bit about the Weidenfeld-Hoffmann Trust. The Weidenfeld-Hoffmann Trust is a trust that funds scholarships for graduate students at the University of Oxford. These are full scholarships, but it also has a leadership program. So within our year in Oxford, we have a special program in which we have special seminars, we have special events, we learn different skills. And the idea of the trust is to get students from all over the world, specifically from developing economies, to go to Oxford and develop leadership skills. Now, we wouldn't be here, of course, if it wasn't for the University of Oxford that has been able to increase our endowment. And we are very lucky to have with us today the Vice Chancellor of the University, Professor Louise Richardson. It is a real honor for us to have her here. And without further ado, I'm just going to give the floor to her for her to share some introductory words with us.
Thank you very much, Sergio. The pleasure and the honor is entirely mine. Thank you all for coming. The Weidenfeld-Hoffmann Trust is a wonderful, Oxford is a wonderful university, and there are many wonderful things about it, and one of the most wonderful is the Weidenfeld-Hoffmann Trust. Sergio has described what is involved, but what this does is not only transform the lives of the scholars who come to Oxford, it also transforms Oxford by enriching the rest of the university with the perspectives of these dynamic young people. And thirdly, it transforms the countries they go back to with the skills, with the education and additional training that they've received. Now, this whole initiative was the brainchild of a wonderful man, George Weidenfeld, the centenary of whose birth we'll be celebrating next September. He was born in Vienna in September 1919. And he was utterly committed to education, and it was his brainchild that created this trust. But it is the next generation of philanthropists who've ensured that the trust continues. And I would have to recognize Andre Hoffmann, who has carried on the Weidenfeld Trust, and without whom none of us would be here today. So thank you from all of us, Andre. So we live in deeply uncertain times, and in many countries, not least my own, there is at the moment a complete dearth of leadership. So it has never been more important that we have highly educated, smart, ethical, committed young people running our governments, our NGOs, our businesses, and ensuring a sustainable future for all of us. Over the years, the Trust has educated 276 scholars from 72 countries, and they work in 49 departments across the university. So a diverse range of students studying a diverse range of subjects. Already we have alumni of the Trust are making a difference in their home country. We have the first ever female postgraduate from Ethiopia, is a graduate and is back in her home country working on democratic reform. We have the first female postgraduate from Afghanistan, who's now back in her own country working on building civil society. We have a young doctor who was working at the forefront of the Ebola crisis, another working in the Palestinian refugee camps. So more important than these names and indeed these numbers, this afternoon we're going to hear from some of the scholars themselves. And there's no greater testament to the importance of this scholarship than the voices of the beneficiaries themselves. So I know we're in for a wonderful afternoon, and it could not be a more perfect setting because it is precisely the work of these young people, of this generation, which will enhance the probability of our actually meeting the sustainable development goals we've set for ourselves. So back to you, Sergio. I'm going to hand it back to you, but I hope you all enjoy the afternoon.
Thank you very much, Professor. Now we are going to show you a short video of what we are all about. In the video, you're going to see a couple of our scholars that couldn't be with us today, but whose work is still worth sharing. Some of them have been mentioned already by Professor Richardson.
And the WHT scholarship is one that I cherish up to date because first, it influenced my career path. It reinforced my desire to contribute to the socio-economic development of the African continent.
There have been such fundamental changes, positive changes in the way not only that I view myself, but also in the way that my life trajectory has changed, that I attribute directly to my time as a Weidenfeld and Hoffman scholar.
My experience in Oxford was really enriched by the supplementary learning that was part of the leadership program, be it the discussions about political philosophy or exposures to really world-class thinkers that would come and speak to us.
In the company of such stellar, like-minded people who were very passionate about their different areas of interest, I somehow cultivated within me the inner strength to follow my passion, to come back to my roots in India and try to create an impact and balance environmental conservation with sustainable development and just follow my heart and put my mind where my heart is.
The education and the training that I received helped me design, for example, a new governance system for the world's largest rural anti-poverty program, targeting more than 177 million citizens with services that will now be more free of corruption, more effectively delivered, and more empathetically served.
Every day I need to talk to a range of stakeholders, to communicate with investors, to talk to scientists, to talk to NGOs, and to reach out to people across the continents and countries. And these are the most important skills that I obtained during my time in Oxford and being a WHT scholar.
We all had come from countries that were in transition. We had a lot in common in terms of our experiences, but also our concerns and ambitions for our countries. And it made us feel like part of a tribe, a community in Oxford.
It created strong bonds among scholars, and these are bonds that will last a lifetime. And anytime I face challenges, professional challenges for instance, I would call my fellow scholars, we would discuss and encourage each other.
To me personally, the leadership program gave me more than the actual education in Oxford. And I know I shouldn't say that, but I stand by it. I learned more and I became a better person because I've been a part of WHT leadership program.
I was just joking with Professor Richardson. I was asking her not to revoke Irina's PhD degree after what she said in the video. But I think this, her idea really goes to the core of what this program is for us, and it really speaks highly of the program. the fact that even within the context of the University of Oxford, it still stands out, and it's a huge part of our year, and it really is the highlight of our year, both educational and personal. That said, we are now going to proceed with the short talks that we have prepared for today. We have decided to divide these short talks in 3 different panels, with 3 different topics that we believe are at the core of what the Weidenfeld-Hoffmann Trust represents, and that also overlap with the ethos of Davos and the World Economic Forum, and of course the SDG, and we are very happy and lucky to be here today. So we thank the SDG tent for hosting us. We're going to start, our 3 panels are going to be sustainability, education, and innovation. Our first panel is going to be sustainability, so please join me in welcoming June Samo from Kenya, Kapil Yadav from India, and Simonetta Spalieri from Venezuela.
So thank you, Sergio, for that introduction. So good afternoon, everyone. Yes. I'm June, and I'm here to bring you some interesting stories from sunny Kenya. And I must say that I'm very privileged and honored to be here today. So before I begin, I'd like to start with 2 questions. So how many of you have had to wake up very early in the wee hours of the morning to trek for 1 kilometer to fetch water for your morning shower? You don't have to answer that. Then the second question. How many of you have failed to see a trickle or even a droplet of water coming from your taps despite religiously paying your water bills? You don't have to answer that either. So today I'm here to talk to you about my journey with water and what I discovered about non-revenue water, a menace that is compromising sustainability and compromising our ability to achieve SDG 6. So the 2 questions that I asked you reflect my life experiences with water, and particularly the last one. I lived in Nairobi, and for the longest time, for weeks on end, we never used to have water. We always used to pay our bills on time, but there was just never any water coming out of the taps. And to make matters worse, there were no droughts to explain this phenomena, so we kept on asking ourselves what exactly was the problem. So later on, when I started working in the water sector, is when I realized that there's something known as non-revenue water that is actually the underlying cause to these shortages. So for those of you who've never heard of non-revenue water, it sounds like some sort of menacing, fictitious character from some sort of suspense drama, and it sounds ridiculous. But let me explain it to you. So non-revenue water is the water that's produced by a water utility and lost even before it gets to the consumer. And it's lost through pipe leakages and also theft. So in Kenya, we have a non-revenue of 43%. That's losing 43% of your water. And just to put this into perspective, that's Kenya loses about $76 million annually to this phenomenon. That's a lot of money. And to make matters even worse, Kenya is part of the unlucky 8.3% of countries that are classified as severely water scarce and severely arid. So we can't go around using this kind of water. But what's interesting about this particular problem is that it just doesn't affect Kenya and the developing world. It's also a phenomenon for developed countries. So and why it's so menacing is because the pipes are under the ground. You don't see them. So you don't realize that it's happening. Out of sight, out of mind. I believe that if Kenya and the world are actually set on achieving SDG 6 by 2030, this problem has to be curbed. So there are some initiatives that have started to take place. We have performance-based contracting, which has gotten some success in Malaysia and in Bahamas. At least non-revenue rates have gone down. We also have public-private partnerships, which are being initiated. They're in their nascent stages. But for me, what I feel is something that can really make a change is grooming visionary leaders. And it's a theme that you're going to hear a lot. But for non-revenue water, it actually worked. So in Phnom Penh, in Cambodia, we have Exxon Chan, one of the most notable names in the water sector. This man and his team took non-revenue water in that particular utility from 76%, losing 76% of your water, to 6%. This is one of the lowest rates globally, only after Singapore, which has 4% non-revenue water. That's really low. It's very hard for you to achieve such percentages, but it's possible with the right leadership. So what am I saying here? Water matters, and it matters a lot, particularly in this day and age when climate change is threatening sustainability. And I feel that it is up to us as future leaders and up to you as leaders to actually tackle this problem, to look at it seriously, not to make it a problem that's out of sight, out of mind, but to find ways of reducing it. Thank you so much.
Hello, it is a privilege to be here, and I'm going to talk about plastic pollution in rural India and share a few lessons which I've picked up. What do you think when you think of the word India? To me, I think of colors, the Himalayas, then the rivers flowing towards the ocean, and then the biodiversity, the tiger, the elephant, all those birds. And those hundreds and thousands of lakes and ponds across this landscape. Sadly, some of the colors which now come to my mind when I think of India come from littering of plastic everywhere in this country. And I used to work with a company producing plastic, and I was into mountaineering. So I wanted to do something about this, and I thought it's an environmental issue. So I was trekking in a Himalayan village in India, and I saw this one guy who was picking plastic. He was a waste picker, so someone who has a bag and would just go to dustbins with bare hands, would collect plastic bottles, would go to hotels, shops, and I followed him for around 5 to 6 hours. He carried around 40 kgs on his back. I couldn't do that, it's a mountaineer. At the end of the day, he sold that plastic and he earned an amount which was equivalent to £1. And he took me to a place and he bought me tea and cookies for half of that amount. I never saw him after that, he went away. For me, that £1 represents the poverty of India, and that half pound from which he gave me those tea and cookies represent the generosity of his heart, the peoplehood of India. And after that day, I think for me, environmental issues became interlinked with poverty.